So you want to know how to write lyrics for a song. After you've got your music, you may even have melodies for what you're trying to write, but you don't have the words to say. That type of writer's block is something that we all go through as artists, and I want to show in today's video how to write lyrics for a song, whether it's rap or singing or both, by using a few different techniques that I employ myself when I write my songs. So let's get into the video and show you how it's done. So what is up everybody, I am Legend, and as the title suggests, in today's video I'm going to be teaching you how to write lyrics for a song. I've already made videos on how to come up with melodies, how to come up with harmonies, how to make the beat yourself and all these different things, but I want to focus specifically on the lyrical content, the words, the storytelling of a song to fit those melodies that you may have come up with, or those rhythms or whatever for the rap or singing, whatever it is that you're working on. I want to show you how to actually come up with the right words to say to make it sound catchy and to effectively tell your story the way that you need to tell it. So there's 5 different things that I personally pay attention to when I'm writing, and you may know some of these, you may not, but I think they're pretty obvious. So metaphors, similes, imagery, substitution, and then basically like overdramatization and like overcomplication. And I will explain what I mean by all those last 3 things. In order to get an idea for how you want to approach writing the lyrics for your song, you have to first determine what kind of a song is it going to be. What is the vibe and the overall feel of the music, of the melody that you may have come up with, the emotions that are driving the song. What is that foundation? Is it going to be something light, something dark, something happy or sad, something playful? Is it going to be evil-ish or good? This is going to heavily affect how you go about writing the lyrics for your song, because there are different words that you can use, different things that you can choose to say, and the way that you say it. So musically speaking, the Philippe song was actually inspired by the Stranger Things season 1 soundtrack. It's like a very mesmerizing synth. It just had like this really regretful, sad, thoughtful tone to it, like you're remembering something. Once you find out that vibe of the song, you go into the next step and you allow your choice of words, your vocabulary used in the song, and how you present it to reflect whatever that feel and that vibe is. So if it's a happier song, you're gonna use happier sounding words, or if it's a sad song, you're gonna use more somber tone and a more somber way of words. And
searching for the truth in a text message from an unknown source. Question, tell me, what do I know? What do I know? Yeah.
Obviously, there's different words that you can use to explain certain situations, or different phrasings you can use to explain certain things that you want to say that sound happier, that sound sad, that sound angry. That's the whole point. You want to make sure you tap into those emotions and the specific vocabulary that drives home those points. After that, the next step, step 3, you want to play to the audience. And this is something that is commonly talked about in theater. When you're on a stage and you're acting, like if I'm face to face with you, I can act out something and it can be rather effective because you're seeing me directly here face to face. So you get what I'm trying to say. But when you're in a big, huge, grand theater and you have to play to the audience that's way in the back in the nosebleed seats, you want to over dramatize what you're doing.
I took the next train out to London. The moment you murdered my heart.
I apply this to my songwriting as well, my lyrical content as well. I mean, even though they're not in a physical space and they're far away from me, they hear the music like everybody else. It still is effective when you over dramatize something to explain it in a certain way that just plays it out to be something bigger than it really is, because that's going to tap into the emotion of the listener. It's going to help further those different tools that you use. So it's kind of coinciding with those different ways of songwriting. The first one being the most common, I think, that everybody refers to or likes to think of, which is a metaphor. So you can use something like a metaphor to drive home a more abrasive or straightforward approach to explaining a situation. You're still kind of likening something to something else to bring across that image.
Vanilla skin and pearls galore, cherry lips and curves galore.
And it's not by comparison, like saying this is like this or something like that, but it's like you're personifying whatever event you're talking about, whatever situation you're talking about or person you're talking about, you're personifying that as something else. So a couple of examples of metaphors, there's like one that's like the snow is a white blanket. It's obviously not a blanket, but it looks like a white blanket. You're not gonna say it's like a white blanket, because that's actually what a simile is, but you're saying it is a white blanket. You're using that as a descriptive term. He is a shining star. We're not stars, we're not part of the planets, you know, in the solar system, but to say somebody is a shining star is to say that they're this very bright, outstanding sort of person, if that makes sense. Not only is it very good at being a descriptive way of explaining something, which is very good for songs because you want to paint that image for whoever's listening, but also it gives you the opportunity to use different words to rhyme with different things. Because when you're writing a song, there's points that you want to get across, but there's only so many words that you can use to rhyme with another word. This is a really stupid example, but if I want to rhyme a word with car, and I want to explain in the next line that I'm black, for instance, what rhyming word am I going to think of to explain that I'm black, but rhymes with car? So you would think, for instance, there's a blah, 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 car, I got skin like a chocolate bar. You see what I'm saying? So it describes the fact that I'm black, but since I didn't have a rhyming word with car that communicated the fact that I was black, I made up this metaphor to allow myself to rhyme, but still get my point across. So that is what's very useful about a metaphor, and similar with a simile. But a simile is basically like you're characterizing something. And I think of personification and characterization as two different things, because when you personify something, you're saying that that is this way. You're turning that into that person, that thing, that place. You're saying that that is what that is. So hair was a flowing golden river. That's a direct personification. Her hair was a flowing golden river. Versus a simile, it's basically the same thing, but it's more like a characterization. So her hair was like a flowing golden river. Her hair was as flowing as a golden river. You know what I mean? So it's basically it's the same thing as a metaphor, but you're using words like and as. Rappers do this all the time. I'm stacking bread like sandwiches, you know, like something like that. You know, they're talking about money, but they're characterizing whatever it is they're talking about by comparing it to something else instead of personifying it as something else, if that makes sense. Number 6. So you use your imagery to paint a picture. This is one of the most important things in songwriting to me personally, because when you think about music, you think about the fact that it is an audio-based art form. It is an audible art form where it relies solely on your ears. It's not about taste, it's not about touch, it's not about sight, it's not about smelling or any other sense other than hearing. That is what music is. Now, we can talk about music videos all day, but music is consumed through streaming and all this stuff. It's not like we sit at our computers watching music videos all day. We just put it in, turn off our phones and listen. The importance of using imagery when you're writing your lyric is very high, because you're using the imagery to describe a scene, a person, a place, or a thing, or whatever it is you need to describe.
Broke it all to pieces, everything isn't done. Committed murder in my heart, you're holding a loaded gun. A cold-blooded woman on the run. I thought you were my mirror.
You're painting the picture so that they can get this image in their head of what's going on. And I don't mean this like literally, like you're saying, I was driving down the street and this guy asked me a question and then he did this and I said, hey, I got a blessing. Like, not something like that, but imagery as in like you are the artist, right? Your pen, your paintbrush, whatever is the lyrics, and the colors that you dip, you know, the paintbrush into is the lyrics. And then the instrumental or the music is the canvas, the blank canvas that has no words, no lyrical content to it whatsoever. You're painting a picture. You're using your words to paint a picture of whatever is happening. And once you finish, a listener can listen to that or see that if it was a painting and get their own understanding from it through this imagery. This is why I also think imagery is important, because people have different understandings of the same exact piece of art. The same thing can be said about music. If I write a line that is using imagery to describe something, then it is not a direct statement that I'm saying like this is how you should see it. Now, there are times where you obviously want that to be the case if you're trying to describe a certain story or tell a certain thing or whatever, but also it is very powerful to use imagery to kind of leave whatever's being said open for interpretation. And what's important about this and what's cool about this is when you leave certain lines and certain songs open to interpretation by using your imagery, people can listen to whatever it is that you've written and get their own understanding and relate to it in a way that is super personal to them, while somebody else can listen to this exact same song and get a completely different idea of what is being said that relates personally to them.
Do you want it? 'Cause I can
And another thing about that is you're tapping into the brain of that person. You're tapping into their creative side. It has to paint this picture of what they're seeing. It's the same thing as like an audiobook. And when you do that, when you're able to tap into somebody's brain and their imagination, it keeps them interested in the song. It keeps them thinking about what's happening. If it's so literal, I mean, yeah, they do still have to imagine and picture what you're literally speaking about, but like it's less interesting, and their brain has to do less work to process what you're talking about. So imagery, metaphors and similes, and these descriptive ways to come about explaining something not so direct is a great way to get people to stay interested in the song by painting their own images in their head. So number 7, something that I like to do is I like to think of the points that I am trying to make, and I use substitutions of whatever I'm trying to say to say it in an indirect way. And this plays into metaphors and similes and imagery as well. So for example, I can say something like, this girl has been on my mind all the time. That's a pretty direct way of bringing that point across. Or I can say something like, this ghost has haunted me throughout all of my lifetimes, reincarnated, or like, just thinking off the top of my head. I mean, I gotta really sit down and try to come up with examples to make it actually sound good, but this is also one way that you can approach your lyrical content. Now, this also plays into the last part, the part 8 that I was talking about, in overcomplicating, over-dramatizing, and kind of using overkill in the way that you explain things, and using all of this metaphors and similes and imagery and these substitutions for ways you can go about saying something. When you over dramatize something and you use overkill and you just make it just something that's completely nonsense, but it sounds really dope when you say it. Not only does this allow you to write lyrics that can stretch out over a long phrase, but it plays into the emotion, and it plays into the playing out to the crowd.
And you really had the nerve to push me away, brother. Ground strange men, then your own fiance. Comic cycles overhead me like an albatross. Losing sleep tonight because you know that there's a ghost in my house.
Carrying on that dramatic outward approach of trying to keep the people in the back listening to whatever you're trying to say. What I can say about this is kind of like you're beating around the bush, or you're taking the long way around. Like, you can get directly to the point, straight, and just say, let's say for instance you're talking about a summer love and it was very fiery. You know, you had this summer love with somebody and it just took off. You can say something like a simile like, this love was like a fire. Pretty straightforward, you know, it's pretty to the point. This love was like a fire. Everybody will pretty much understand what that means. Or you can say something like, the summer sky burned orange and our love was the embers. This is actually an example from one of my songs. So you're using all of these different things that I just talked about. The summer sky burned orange, that is a metaphor. And our love was the embers, or was as the embers. So that is a simile. Our love was the embers of this flame in summer that burned in the orange sky, if that makes sense. Like, it's all playing into the imagery, the burning. Our love was the embers, that is also imagery. Like, you think of embers coming off of a flame, the little sparks and things, but then making the comparisons that our love was a flame, our love was a fire, and it burned in the sky of summer, and that's why summer had this look about it, you know? You're playing into all these different things that I just mentioned, and it just over dramatizes to a point to where it's kind of like you're color grading your lyrics, if that makes sense. If you know anything about film, they shoot something that's really flat and then they color grade it. They add their super punchy, contrasty colors, and that's the way that I see writing lyrics. You can start off flat, which is the main idea that you have, the main thing that you want to communicate, and then you color grade it, quote unquote, you color correct it and color grade it and add a look by using metaphors and similes and imagery. You're beating around the bush, you're taking the long way around to explain something. Or you can talk about, for instance, say, this person haunted me, broke up with them and they've been haunting you. The thought has been haunting you. Kind of a good way to say things, but I'm gonna use another one of my songs as an example. Instead of saying, this person haunted me, that's the point I was trying to get across, I said, karmic cycles overhead me like an albatross. What in the world? All that to say, like, I was being haunted by the thoughts of somebody. Like, karmic cycles. I'm playing into the whole aspect of like past lives and things like that, and being haunted by demons and stuff. So karmic cycles are overhead me, so they're constantly hovering over me like an albatross, which is a bird, and that is a simile. Overhead me like an albatross. Using a simile, albatross, that's kind of like imagery, you know, you see the bird flying. And then there's other parts in the song where I'm talking about all these walls seem to bleed red. Blatant imagery. So it's like I'm in a room by myself, and I was there in Spain, and I was just feeling like the walls were bleeding red, which a color of love, if you will. The walls were bleeding red, and I felt like, you know, it's like a horror movie when the blood's coming from the walls and you're being haunted by this person. That's the way that I explained it. So you see these examples that I give, and you see the way that I kind of overcomplicate what I'm trying to say. I beat around the bush, but in a direct way, if that makes sense. I'm basically coming to the same point that I want to make, but I'm taking the long way around to explain it. Because again, with this, like, let's say I have a phrase and I have to stretch it out over like an 8 count. I can say 6, 7, I'm haunted, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I still have that whole bar that's like there's nothing left for me to say. Or I can say karmic cycles overhead me like an albatross. That's 5 counts versus I'm haunted, 2 counts. So you can fill in more space with that method, and that allows you to play with different melodies when you're writing. It allows you to, if like you had melodies for what you already wrote, or you need melodies for what you are currently writing, you can play around with different rhythms, and it's just everything plays into the other thing. Everything coincides with something else. Your lyrics can either make or break your rhythms. If you write something that's too long and you have to try and squeeze it within a short, you know, 8 count or whatever. On the other hand, if you have an 8 count, like I said, that you have to fit something in, but you are trying to communicate that you're haunted, I'm haunted, 2 counts versus karmic cycles overhead me like an albatross. You're filling up more space, which gives you the opportunity to add more notes to whatever you're saying, notation, harmonies, and different things. Just allows you to be more creative and gives you more options. It's all about just feeling things out, being dramatic. That is the key point that I think I can drive home here, is being overly dramatic with your writing. Because when you're straightforward, I mean, there's a time and place for being straightforward. There's a time and place where you don't want to over dramatize things, and you want to like keep a simple approach, a minimal approach, because there's really great songs that have really minimal lyrical content, straightforward content. But then I think a lot of what I write, me personally, is like me making these comparisons. And you've seen in some of the examples that I've shown, cherry lips and curves allure. She had red lips. Her lips were red. She had red lipstick on. You know, that I could have easily said she had red lipstick, but to say cherry lips, it just sounds more exotic, and it's descriptive, and it's got that imagery to it. Cherry lips. It's a metaphor because cherry is a fruit. So I'm comparing her lips to a cherry. It's something that is sweet, and it's red, and it's smooth. You know, so just, I don't know, I'm just giving out random examples. These are things that you can definitely use in your lyrical content. Anybody can learn, anybody can grow, anybody can become great at writing lyrics. It just takes practice and time. So with that being said, thank you guys for watching. If you liked the video, please leave a like down below. Leave a comment if you have any questions or comments. If you're not already subscribed, please subscribe, turn on the bell notifications, and set them to all so you'll be notified every time I upload a brand new video. And as always, be dope and stay legendary. Can't wait to see what you guys come up with. I'm listening.